Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Last Honest Realtor podcast. I'm your host, David Fleming. Thank you so much for joining me today as we look at tips for first-time condo buyers in 2025. Now, if I was a cynic, which I am, but I'll say if I was a cynic and a market bear, I would say first-time condo buyers in 2025, well, that's an oxymoron, and I'm already aware. I read all the YouTube comments and I like them, to be honest. I like to know what people are thinking, but I'm already aware that some folks are going to say, why would any first-time buyer jump into the condo market right now? Hey, I get it. Condo market's not doing well. I'm not hiding that. Make no bones about it. I'm discussing it openly. But the thing is, if you are a first-time condo buyer, well, what's that old adage? Buy while others are selling and sell where others are buying? That seems to ring true. I would also say that the market is in a dip. Looks like time to buy. But as we'll discuss, one of the tips I'll have is about fear. And I understand for condo buyers, especially first-time condo buyers, there is a fear. If I go in and buy this condo for $500,000 and this same model sold for $600 a few years ago, is it going to drop to $200? I totally get it. Now, first-time buyers are often under the most pressure. And it's ironic because you might say, a $550,000 purchase, well, that shouldn't really put you under more pressure than the person buying for $4 million. I would say last-time buyers have the bigger task. They can't screw it up. It's their last purchase. If you are coming from a 3-bed, 2-bath, semi-detached home and you're saying, we're going to buy our house for $3 million to $3.5 million, this is it. I'd say there's more pressure. Where are you going to plant those roots with your land transfer tax and real estate fees and legal fees? All those costs, you don't want to mess this up and have to move again. What schools are your kids going to go to? Are you taking transit to work or are you driving? What parks are nearby? Where are your friends? Where is your family? Where are you going to spend the rest of your life? Because honestly, folks, where you end up in your last house and where you raise your kids, well, it's going to shape you and your family just as I will detail where first-time buyer in the condo market ends up is going to shape their life as well. So I understand how we could argue, and I might be inclined, as I just said, to argue that the first-time buyer buying for $500,000, hey, it's not that big a deal. But I would also say that where you end up will shape your lives based on what you buy and where. And speaking from personal anecdotes, when I was working at 290 Merton Street early on in my career at Bosley Real Estate, I looked at a condo around the corner at 300 Beloyal. And ironically, I went in with my mother. And if you have a mother like mine, she absolutely loved it. She was like, oh, Dave, this is amazing. I can see you living here. Oh, let's do it. I'll write a check for you right now. I was like, no, Mom, it's cool. Got my own money. It's all good, right? It just kind of reminded me of when I took her to see the first apartment I looked at in 1998 in Hamilton at McMaster University, where it was a basement apartment that did not have a separate entrance. So I'd have to walk through an old lady's home with shared laundry. You could hear everything in the house. And she said, Dave, I've got my checkbook. I'll put down a deposit right now. And I whispered to her, Mom, you couldn't pay me to live here. The look on her face, my God. So my first venture into the market, I went to Beloyal and I said, you know what? It's just not the right time. And I'm not sure about this location. Guess what? That made all the difference. Because a year later, I bought a condo on King Street in downtown Toronto, and that absolutely positively shaped the rest of my life. I'm not overstating this. I was in King East. Hey, my brother was not too far. It means we hung out a lot more. The bars, the restaurants, where I went on dates, everything came back to where I planted roots in my early 20s. And that for me gives me a basis, and I cannot believe it's been 20 years, but it gives me a basis to try to educate today's first-time condo buyers. So I'm going to go through tips. That's how I figured we would do this podcast. Tip number 1, remember why you're buying. And at the risk of trying to make this into a, hey, buy now and say, price doesn't really matter, I'm saying, look, it is an investment. I totally get that. But this isn't just buying shares of stock. This is something you're going to live in. So remember why you're buying first and foremost. Are you looking to invest? Is that all that matters? Are you moving in with a partner? Are you moving out of your parents' house? Do you work 80 hours per week and you just want to take the elevator down from work, walk across the street, flop into your bed, and then take the elevator back up again? I think of the investment bankers. This sets the groundwork to allow you not to get in your own way. Remember why you're buying. It sounds simple enough, but as I said, you will get in your own way at some point during this process. So remember why it is. I'm 25. I live with my parents. I can't stand it. I need to get out. Okay. But then I would say, well, why don't you rent? So as you'll see with the next few tips, we will examine ultimately why you do end up deciding to buy instead of renting. But first tip I can give you is remember why you're buying. Now, the second tip, don't try to time the market. And here's where I know it would sound like BS, but I said above, it sets the groundwork to allow you to not get in your own way. So I don't believe in gambling. And I'm going to try to not go off on a tangent about how legalized gambling has just ruined television sports because we have to listen to Ron McLean tell us about a parlay. I don't believe in gambling because I know the house always wins. And that's with stocks as well. I know you're 22, you trade your Quest Trade portfolio with those TV ads that talk about how much richer you're going to be. The house always wins. The market always wins, except for the 1%. So cynical take aside, guys, I'm saying don't try to time the market. So let's say that you were looking to buy right now. You're looking for a 7-year timeline. If you were to say, I'm going to hold off for 2 years, you'd better be right. Because you're 2 more years of doing what? Renting, throwing your money away, living with your parents, not liking it, in a terrible relationship, and you guys are splitting rent and you don't talk to each other or a roommate. I'm just saying, I'm not trying to make a pitch to buy now into a depressed condo market, but I am saying don't try to time the market. Because if you spent $530,000 versus $510,000, guys, it's $20,000. It's a lot of money. If it's stacked in front of you right now, it's real. But over the context of 8 years that you're going to be in your first condo, extrapolate that across 8 years. And just think about the 2 years that you're in that place versus the 2 years that you would have been living in the basement. I'm just making an argument because I can tell you, I have bought and sold many properties throughout my life. And if you were to take my first my first condo, I would have paid more if I had to because I spent 7 years there. The best years of my life. Sorry, I was visually thinking there. I was going to talk about, the dates that I brought home to the condo. Yeah, you know what? My very first date with my now wife, I brought her back to that condo. So tell me that I should have timed the market. I should have waited another 4 months to try to get a better deal. I'm sorry. First-time condo buyers, I'm telling you, remember why you're making this decision. Don't try to time the market. The market always wins. It just does. You're playing roulette. The house always wins. You're gambling. The house always wins. I do not believe that 95% of people can accurately time the market. And when people try to time the market and they're wrong, what I find is they usually hold on even longer. I wouldn't recommend it. Now, the third tip, get your mortgage pre-approval. To me, this is basic common sense, and I can't believe that I have to turn this into a tip. But if I'm being honest, and can you tell I'm obsessed with age? I got into the business at 23 years old. I bought my first condo at 25. I work with a lot of first-time buyers. What I am seeing now, and I don't work with a lot of first-time buyers, but Matt and Tara do. I have a ton of inquiries through the Last Honest Realtor podcast, through Toronto Realty blog. I've got a team that works with our first-time buyers. And that's because I'm old and Matt and Tara are young and cool. So I'm finding that a lot of the first-time buyers are not doing their financial homework in advance. And to me, it's a bad sign. The folks that tool around with an online mortgage calculator and they say, I can afford $600,000. Then they finally, after they've looked at how many different condos, figure out that they can only afford $540. They're going to be disappointed. You can't run around and look at more expensive and better properties, then go and look at something inferior and be excited about it. And I can't tell you how many times that's happened to us lately for young folks that are not getting their mortgage pre-approval. And it's not just getting that pre-approval, it's educating yourself. I'm just going to ask, do you know the difference between variable and fixed rate mortgages? Do you understand the amortization period? Do you understand insured versus uninsured? Do you understand the mortgage term? Google it, and you might get an American website that talks about the 30-year term. We don't have a 30-year term. We have a max 10-year term. Imagine being the person that got a 30-year term at 1.49% during the pandemic in Valdosta, Georgia. We don't have that here. So many of you watching this are far more educated, and you're like, I don't need your help with amortization periods. But I think a lot of the first-time buyers do. You need to understand the role of the CMHC. You need to get a cynical viewpoint from myself or a mortgage broker about how, well, I was just having this conversation with Tony. The banks out there right now would rather loan to somebody that's been in the country for 6 months that has a poor income, but a 5% down payment because that mortgage is insured by the CMHC. The banks would rather lend to that person than the guy that makes $1 million a year through his own company because he pays himself. cynical take. It's a whole other podcast probably. But I'm saying that as a first-time buyer, I'm not saying you need to listen to cynicism, but I think you really need to understand the role of the CMHC as a backstop for the Canadian banks. You need to understand all of the terminology. And it's not that I want to be the person that lives and breathes the Bank of Canada interest rate, variable versus fixed. It's understanding that when I bought my first place, my mortgage was a 4.99% fixed rate. And my father said, take the 10-year at 6.79, rates will never be this low again. He was wrong. My dad's been wrong about a few things over the years, and I don't have daddy issues like you, of course. No, my dad, yeah, he was wrong about that. So wrong. Parents love to educate you. Actually, one of these points, I should put this in here. Point number 15, don't listen to anything your parents tell you. But that was my first experience. And I was in the business, so I knew enough to know that dad was wrong, and evidently he was because mortgage rates came down after that. So I think the third point, get your mortgage pre-approval, should also come with start to understand all that you can and absorb all that you can about mortgages. Now, my fourth point is this. Understand your personal finances. And here's where, as I put on the glasses, that was timely. Here's where David starts to show that he's 44 and not 25. What's my first point? Gen Z with $12 coffees, YOLO crew. Oops, I don't think I was supposed to read that. No, seriously though. I'm going to typecast and I'm going to say, yeah, there's a lot of folks out there that don't know anything about personal finance. My sister is a high school teacher, and she continuously tells me that there should be a course called personal finance. They should teach you what compound interest is at an early age. They should explain to you what credit card debt does to you. And they don't. We don't teach people this. And once again, I am finding, and maybe it's because I was a nerd in high school or when I was a young adult or still am, but I love to understand personal finance. I love to budget. Growing up, I wouldn't say cheap, I was frugal. I liked saving. I'm not going to say that this is my viewpoint. I'm going to blame Matthew. Matthew is 31. Matthew explained to me once, I put YOLO crew because that was his definition. He said, my generation is literally YOLO. My generation, I'll have a friend that goes to Wimbledon and then later on goes to Mexico and then later on that year does a tour of Europe and then just for good measure goes to the World Series. Because a lot of them think they're never going to own real estate, so they're just spending it. They're YOLO. Okay, well, pick or choose, but what I see at our open houses is a lot of young people coming through and they do want to own real estate with their $12 coffees. So I think we should probably maybe sort of conclude or just offer that there is a younger generation that's not as in touch with their personal finances as previous generations. I mean, I bought my first savings bond at 11 years old. When I was 12, I rented the Leaside Arena for $88 an hour and went and pooled $10 from a whole bunch of kids and my teacher, Mr. Montgomery, to make a profit. Yeah, that's what I was doing. He called me a young Alan Eagleson, and that was a few years before Alan Eagleson went to jail. But I salted money away. When I was bartending, I had a ledger of all the tips that I was making. I sold concert tickets on eBay. I sold Xboxes on eBay when they first came out. That was fun. That was a lifetime ago. I think that was 2001. I was working at Celestica. But my point is that was me growing up. And when I'm running into the younger folks today, they're just not in tune with their personal finances. These folks need to understand taxes, maintenance fees, utilities, their mortgage payment, the difference between principal and interest within that mortgage payment. Because it's one thing to say, I can't believe I'm going to pay $2,000 a month in mortgage. Do you understand that $1,200 is interest and $800 is principal? Do you understand what forced savings is? Could you put together a list of your monthly burn, your after-tax burn? What if there's a gym in the building that you're looking at? Could you cancel your gym membership? What if there's a building where, older building, basic cable and internet is included? You need to budget for your personal expenses. How much are your groceries? How much is your gym membership? What are you spending on entertainment? What are you spending on travel? I mean, if Matt's right and kids are spending $25,000 a year on travel, well then no, they're not going to own real estate. But I really think, along with understanding mortgages, and along with learning every single thing that you can about the role of the CMHC and, I would say introduce yourself to a mortgage broker, learn from them, put their knowledge and experience to work for you, I would say that you really do need to take a deep dive on your personal finances. Now, the fifth point, the tip, if you will, my fifth tip, accept condo maintenance fees. I can tell you that I got into the business in 2003, 4, and one of the first things that I said when it comes to condos is, why would anyone want to own a condo when you're paying a maintenance fee? It's like paying rent on something you own. My first condo, the maintenance fees were $299 a month, and they included all the utilities. I learned pretty quickly that I was wrong on that. I can be wrong on things. But if I were to go look at a condo that at the time was $500,000 and the maintenance fees were $1,000 a month, I would say this is crazy. But guys, we don't own a house. We own a condo. We don't have to worry about the roof of our house or the aging furnace. We're not going to worry about the water damage from the bathtub upstairs pouring through the ceiling. You know, in a condo, you're insured, right? In a house, hopefully you would be as well. But there are so many elements of that house that we don't have to worry about because we're in a condo. A condo also has staff. Yes, they have concierges. They have cleaners. There's electricity throughout the building and the common elements. There's a gym. Who's cleaning it? What about the parking garage underground? Guys, the condominium is a corporation. And I'll touch on that in a little bit. But the corporation is going to incur expenses. Your maintenance fees are paying for your concierge, your cleaners, your common elements, heating your hallways, all the hydro on these common elements. This is what the fees are, and this is why we pay them. So if you run the risk of saying, like I did from a very early age, I don't want to own a condo because maintenance fees are ridiculous. Again, going back to when I first bought, my fees were $299 per month. I'm writing this down. They included everything. I would assume that water was probably $40, electricity was probably $40, and gas was probably $40, let's just say. So that's $120. So really I'm only paying $170 a month to live in this condo. Get to park underground, I have the elevator, I have the gym that I don't really use, but the concierge is there, the staff, that's pretty cheap. Now I know nowadays it's gonna cost you more, but if you're paying $600 a month, it's not the end of the world. In a new building, water, heat, hydro are all separate. You rent your heat pump, you rent your air conditioner. Yeah, I get it, it starts to add up. But if you're looking in buildings that are 15 years old, which to me is a sweet spot, and you see maybe two of three of heat, hydro, and water are included, and it pays for building insurance, and it pays for common elements, and you've got your underground parking spot, it's not really a raw deal. So point number 6, as I alluded to, understand condominium ownership. And this is very important because the condominium is a corporation. You own your unit, but you are part of a corporation. The corporation is all of the unit owners. You're in this together. You're all in the boat. You're all tied in together. You have common elements. Understand what those are. You have a board of directors who make decisions. But the board of directors sometimes can't make decisions on behalf of everybody because, according to the condominium declaration, you might need a certain number of unit owners to vote. I believe if you wanted to change something in the declaration, it takes like 80 or 90%. But if you wanted to pass certain rules, it might take 50%. And speaking of those rules, there are rules and regulations. For example, let's say that you were a young man living at 230 King Street East with this big terrace and you had a barbecue. And then one day management said, everyone with the barbecue on the second floor, of which there are 8 unit owners, you can't have it anymore. If you're like me, you're not taking that laying down. So you might have to do something about it. So I wrote a letter to the board. Oh, is this about me? Yeah. I wrote a letter to the board with a statement from the local fire department saying that my barbecue was 22 feet away from the door and that blah, blah, blah. And eventually, along with the other 7 people, the condo board backed down. So there are rules and regulations. I mean, what if the gym in your building was closed every day from 12 to 1 so they could clean it? That's kind of ridiculous to me. Because what if you happen to be the person that works out every day from 12 to 1 and they're going to close the entire thing? Because one lady wants to come in and Windex one machine at a time? Yes, there are rules, there are regulations. And if you're like me, well, you can tell I don't love the rules, especially when they affect me. But you're gonna have to find a way to play nice in the sandbox. So another thing to consider with the condo corporation is that fees can go up. There can be special assessments. A special assessment is special. It's essentially when the condo corporation needs a lot of money, and instead of raising the fees, they'll say to everybody, hey, there's 500 unit owners here. Why doesn't everyone pay $1,000? And we'll have the $500,000 to do the repair that we want. And then people absolutely freak out and lose their minds. You know what? Expect that during your time owning a condo, you will have one special assessment. Now's a good time to say that I never had a special assessment. I lived in one condo for 7 years and another condo for 6 years or vice versa. But I would say expect one special assessment. You need to understand condominium ownership. Now, along with that, tip number 7, you need to understand the condominium status certificate. Anybody buying a condo should be either reviewing the status certificate in advance of making an offer in a busy market so you can make an unconditional offer, or you should be making it conditional for you, your agent, and your lawyer to review. The condominium status certificate, I remember when it was printed on paper and in a big thick envelope and you had to drive out to a property management company near the airport to get it. I mean, I remember faxing offers, late night Kinkos. Yeah, it's all online now. So status certificate is essentially a 20 megabyte file that shows up and it's zipped and it's got 15 different files. You're probably not going to read the entire declaration. It's very lengthy. The rules and regulations, yeah, okay. You might want to know about pets. You might want to know about quiet enjoyment and some things that are out of date, like buildings that say that 65% of the gross floor area of the condo must be carpeted, and then no one adheres to that. What you really want to know is contained within a 6-page summary that's in every status certificate. And it tells you how much money is in the reserve fund. You're going to need to have some basis of understanding. Is $3 million a lot? Well, I don't know. How old's the building? Is there 10 units or is there 800 units? How much is in the reserve fund? Is the condominium corporation meeting its obligations? In terms of the budget, have they gone over? Do they have a deficit? Do they have a surplus? Are there any lawsuits in the building currently? Did an old lady slip and fall outside? Is she suing for 10 million? Is the building suing anybody? Maybe they're suing the developer originally. Is there a class action? Is there bid rigging accusations among the board of directors? That happened once in a condo. But the summary will give you all the important points and they'll raise the red flags. It's kind of like if I did a home inspection, or rather if I was representing a buyer and I looked at a home inspection, I want to know about knob and tube wiring, aluminum wiring, asbestos and urea formaldehyde insulation. I want to know about clay pipes. I want to know about lead pipes. I want to know about mold. If none of those things are present in the home, okay, yeah, I mean, we could move forward. Maybe the furnace is old or the windows need to be replaced. But you're getting rid of the red flags. And I would say in a status certificate, if you read that there's a special assessment for $30,000 per unit, yeah, that's a red flag. If you see that there's a $25 million lawsuit and the condominium corporation is only insured up to $15 million, okay, yeah, now we're talking. If you see that the maintenance fees are going up 25% per year every year for the next 5 years, well, that's the kind of thing that's going to affect your decision. So understand the condominium status certificate. And I would also look into short-term rentals because for some people, well, that's great. That's what they want. For a lot of people, they really don't want to know that there are short-term rentals allowed in the building. Now, those are 7 points, and we haven't even got to the fun part yet. That's all the boring stuff. What about actually looking? Here's where I'll give you some tips based on a 44-year-old dad. I should have Matt and Tara in here right now. But I would say tip number 8, consider location first and foremost. There are some people that will say, I want a hard loft, brick and beam. Sure. In that case, maybe you don't care. Is it King West? Is it Queen West? What about Queen East? What about the Knitting Mill lofts? Beautiful building. You can get your brick and beam. Do you know what's around there? How many shelters, missions, and such? So I would look at location first and foremost because as I said earlier, it's going to dictate who you are, what you're doing. I bought on King Street. My brother was in the area. I had 2 friends in the area. It's where we hung out. We went to Betty's every Thursday. That's what we did back in the day on King Street. And for me, driving to work, it was great. I also was able to jump on the Don Valley Parkway in about 2 minutes when I wanted to go north and golf on Sundays. It shaped the way that my 20s turned out. And had I bought on Beloyal, oh my God, my life would be so different. It would have been such a mistake. So I think location is the most important thing. And, you know, I've always said, and maybe this has changed for better or for worse with, you know, Ubers, but I used to say when I was younger, if you want to party in King West, you don't need to live in King West. So I lived at 230 King, that's at Sherbourne. I could take a cab. I guess you could take the streetcar, I didn't do that, but I could take a cab over to King West if I wanted to go out to a nightclub or a bar. You don't need to live in the area in which you want to party. So there are some exceptions to the rule. I remember an extended family member, one of those kids growing up that was like, you know, I basically want to get married and have kids at 18, right? Like the guy that's ordering liver in the restaurant, he's at 18 and the only other guy ordering liver is 98. So this extended family member ends up buying a place in Yorkville, right? At 22. I'm like, why are you in, dude, that's the last place you want to be. Well, he certainly enjoyed it. I was telling him, you got to go to King West, you got to go to King East, you know, don't you want to go out for wings? And it was like, well, no, you want to go out for liver. So listen, I think that you got to understand yourself, and maybe his life would have been a little bit different if he had moved to King West. But at the same time, it's the kind of guy that's like, you know what? I don't want to take the TTC to work in the morning and, you know, have to schlep through all that. Maybe I will bite the bullet and pay $350 a month to park underneath my building. But then I'm going to cut expenses everywhere else across the board, right? Pick your spot based on who you are. And for him, at 22, to move to Yorkville, I didn't think it was the best move, but he knows himself. So point is, guys, as far as location goes, I think you know yourself. And I think you really need to consider who you are and what you're into. And maybe try to think outside the little box a little bit. Like I said, I looked at that place in Beloyal. I was thinking about it because it was close to work and it was close to where I grew up. But I got outside the box just a little bit outside my comfort zone. So I don't know if that point was contradictory. Know yourself, kind of adhere to what it is that you're into, but at the same time, just maybe challenge yourself a tiny bit. Now, tip number 9, consider price per square foot. Now, this is not the be all and end all. Price is not everything, but it's a lot. And price depends on the age of the building, the style of the building, the location, the amenities, and what's important. So if there's a luxury building with amazing amenities, are you going to use them? Are you going to pay more for a 500 square foot unit? Say you're paying $600,000 for that unit, but you could get the same size in a different building that's a little bit older, without a fancy lobby, no amenities, for $500,000. I think the price per square foot is the first metric that you should look at. And you should understand location, King East versus King West, or say Leslieville, or say a 20-year-old building versus a 1-year-old building, a luxury building versus a average building. But price per square foot is a very important metric. And I personally, having lived in a couple different condos, not really using the amenities too much, I like buildings with lower fees, fewer amenities. I don't need luxury, but I don't want old. I think I found my sweet spot. So when you consider your price per square foot, and I can't really give you a ballpark or an average or any indication on that, time was units were selling for $1,300, $1,400 for micro condos in new buildings, because the lower price a unit is, the higher the price per square foot. Because of course people bid up the lowest units. Well, at least in a hot market, they bid up the cheapest price units because they're the most affordable. They're the most people looking for them. It's the old absolute price versus relative. So on a relative basis, price per square foot, that's the metric you should be looking at first and foremost. Now, tip number 10, kind of framed it as a question. Target the building or target the unit? So I'd say my tip is to consider whether you would target the building or target the unit. So if I said location, all right, I want to live in Liberty Village. I've decided that's where I want to live. And I want to live there because of reasons A, B, C, and D. Now, maybe it's the supporting infrastructure. You've got fantastic amenities around there. And I don't mean building amenities. I mean your LCBO, your groceries, your banks, your restaurants. Maybe it's because you work in the area and you want to be close to work. Maybe that's where your friends are. Whatever the reason, let's say you decide that's where I'm going to go. Now, do you target a particular building that you like? Or do you target a style or a size of unit? So I phrase it like a question because I think that this is 50-50 among the buyer pool. So if I were to turn around and say, St. Lawrence market area, it's a fantastic place to live, would I target a building? Hey, you know what? You want to be in 230 King Street or 168 King Street because they're just old enough that the price per square foot is going to be lower, but the maintenance fees are reasonable. They're both on King, they're great locations. Or do you target a size? David, tell me when I can get 700 square feet for $550,000. And then you can't get it in a newer building and you can't get it in this well-located building, but you can get it over here. So I would say target the building or target the unit. Target a particular building and you're waiting for the right unit. It thins out your options. Target a unit type, size, style, and you have more options, but you still need to do your math on the value and consider the location and the overall offering. Tip number 11, consider the market that you're in and accept it. To me, it's this idea that you have to work in reality. And I'm not, again, making a pitch to, hey, all is well, guys, good time to buy, good time to sell. I'm saying that if you're a first-time buyer, there's always a lot of noise. Whether it's the media, whether it's your friends with bright ideas, whether it's your parents, you've got to work within the market that you're in. So if you're in a red-hot market, you have to accept that. If there are 13 offers on the condo that you're interested in, you're not going to be able to make that conditional offer for under the list price. Accept the market that you're in. But by the same token, if you're in a cold market, and we happen to be in that in 2025, accept that as well. So I can tell you that at a company meeting last week, an agent announced one of his new listings. It's a condo, and he's holding back offers. And you should have seen my slow turn. For those listening and not watching, that was a slow turn. I could not believe that this guy was going to hold back offers on a condo In Toronto in 2025, sure, there are a couple of units that have done really well with offer nights. Very cool, unique, distinct, loft-like, underpriced, well-marketed. But when you have a cookie-cutter unit, you can't just slap an offer date on it and expect to get multiple offers. Say you have a condo and you think it's worth $600. Time was, you could put it up for $499, you're gonna have a million offers and you're gonna sell it for $6.25. You might put it up for $499 and have 0 showings. It's the condo market today. So if you're a buyer, don't go and look at the unit with the offer date. Take advantage of what the market is. Understand the current market and accept it. You have to work within the market that you're in. If you're in a seller's market, you're better off exiting the market than trying to pretend that it's a buyer's market. And I go back to 2022. I loved 2022. I had 113 showings on a condo in Richmond Street. I know that record because, well, it's the most I've ever had. 113 showings. That was the market back then. If you're the condo buyer and you're walking in there and you've got a blog that you read, I was going to say like Garth Turner's blog that's like, oh, the sky is falling. Or you've got a buddy that tells you, hey, the market's going to crash. Or your dad's saying, give him a low ball offer, make him sweat a little bit. You've got to understand. There's a lineup at the door. There's 28 offers on offer night. I've had 28 offers on a condo, by the way. And you have to work within that market. So we're not in that market right now. I'm just illustrating a point. Understand the market that you're in. If you're on a market that's on the upswing, don't pretend like it's 2 months ago. If you're in the market that's on a downswing, don't accept the agents that tell you that the market is fantastic. And so to put it in current context, if you're bidding on a property and say that you've made an offer on a property, and the listing agent turns around and says to your agent, well, yeah, but the comps, the comps, bro, there's a river of blood outside. Look at the market. That's what I'm saying. Accept the market for what it is. When it's red hot, when it's ice cold, and work within that structure. I said river of blood. It was meant to be metaphorical. Okay, guys, point number 12, tip number 12, do your homework in advance. So it is this. Simply put, you're in a hot market. There's multiple offers. I'm sorry, you can't make that conditional offer because you haven't got your mortgage pre-approval or you haven't reviewed the status certificate. It's so simple. And again, let's illustrate a point. When the market's hot and I've got 13 offers on a property, whether it's a house or whether it's a condo, I'm always shocked by the people that come in conditional. Properties do not sell in competition conditionally. There's always the one-off. Always. Well, my friend said, your friend's lying. Oh, that's another point. That should be tip number 17. Nobody that ever told you their story is actually telling the truth. That's a whole other podcast. But what I'm saying is you can create an argument where your conditional offer up against 14 other offers is going to be successful because your friend said this, or you read this, or your dad told you that. It doesn't happen. So do your homework in advance. And again, going back to the market that we're currently in, which is cold, we're in a soft market. So you could use this as a bargaining chip. Tell me, well, David, we're in a soft market now, so why wouldn't I make an offer conditional on financing and status? Because it's leverage. Do your homework in advance. Every offer coming in a condo right now is conditional. So do your homework in advance. Make the unconditional offer and crush them on the price. That's how you negotiate. Don't be lazy. Do your homework. Just as you would in a red hot market, doing your homework to compete. Now you're in a cold market, do your homework to negotiate. Tip number 13, be realistic with offers. I've always asked people, would you rather save a few bucks and buy a unit you like less? I had a banker once. Every single question was, how much will this appreciate? How much will this appreciate? And I finally said to him, as an example, this unit here, this will appreciate at 5.6% per annum over the next 3 years. This unit here will appreciate at 4.6% per annum over the next few years. Which one would you like? And he said, well, obviously the one that's going to appreciate more. And I said, which one's bigger? Which one's nicer? Which one's a better location? Which one are you going to be happier in? Real estate is an investment, and I understand that. But at the end of the day, you're living in it. So you can tell me that you're going to buy a stock. And I would say if it's a 20-year stock, it does not matter whether you buy it today, tomorrow, the next day, the next week, the next month. It doesn't matter. Sure, you could wait and time the market. This goes back to one of the points we had earlier. I really don't believe that you or anyone that you know has the knowledge to look at this stock every minute, every hour, every day to figure out the timing on it. And if it's over 20 years, it doesn't matter. So I would say in this example of the banker, I said, same thing. You're not buying a stock here. You're not looking to trade this stock in a month. You are looking to live in this condo. So there's an investment aspect to it. But if you wanted to live in prime King West, would you buy a condo in Liberty Village where you're not excited to live because you know it's going to outappreciate the market? I have this saying, it's better to overpay for a unit you love than to underpay for a unit you like. And I tell people this all the time. I was on the phone with somebody the other day, and we were in multiple offers on a house. And I wasn't trying to push the guy, but he was at $1.5 million. And the agent had said to me, David, you come up to $1,520,000, it's yours. And I called him and I told him, and he said, I can't afford that. Tell me I'm a jerk. Tell me I'm trying to make a sale. Tell me I'm pushing the client. But I said to him, I paid $277,000 for my first condo. I sold it for $385,000. I paid $665,000 for my next condo. Sold it for $1.4 million. I'm not going to tell you what I bought my house for and what it's worth now. But my point is, to this guy, you're buying this house for you and your fiance for the next 10 years. $1.5 million versus $1.520,000, it's not going to kill you. The issue with him was there was a psychological barrier on the price. The issue with him was, I want to get a deal in this market. And so what I would say is, do you want a better deal on a house you like? Or do you want to pay a little bit more for the house that you love? Because he told me he absolutely loved this house. So in my second condo, I almost lost it over 10 grand. I said I paid $665,000. And if you ask me, David, having proposed to your now wife in that condo, having brought your first child home to that condo, would you have gone back and paid more for that condo? Yes, absolutely, I would have. So again, guys, the point here is be realistic with offers. I'm not trying to make this too dramatic or romanticize it, but I'm telling you that if you're listening to this right now, looking at buying your first place, and 8 years from now, you go back and think about the price that you paid, or could I have done a little bit better, or should I have maybe bought in a different location that could have outappreciated? Guys, go back to the beginning. Well, my first tip, remember why you're buying. Be realistic with your offers. If your only concern is the price and you do not care where you live or what building or what unit or what size or what features or what amenities, then I would encourage you to stop and go back to the very beginning. Start over and think about what you're doing and why. My last point, guys, my last tip, hire a real estate agent. This is a whole other podcast, guys. In fact, I did a podcast on this last year. What is the value of a buyer agent? I don't want to repeat that right now, but I will say, and I left this for last, hire an agent. I'm not here to sell myself. I'm not here to sell the industry. But what I am going to say is that if you are a first-time buyer, you're probably younger. The younger generation, they have access to things like House Sigma that we didn't have when we were that age. That empowers you. But it still doesn't mean that you are qualified and knowledgeable and experienced enough to go out there and do it on your own. Some people think, hey, if I can buy through the listing agent, maybe I can save a few dollars. I wouldn't trust the listing agent that's going to do that. It's plain and simple. You work with a buyer agent, you don't have to pay them anything. Some people might say, well, it's built into the cost. Guys, I'm not the guy that when my car breaks down on the side of the road, I decide to get out the jack and pump it up and figure out what to do. I also don't run my own investment portfolio because I stopped doing that when I was 22 and gained some common sense. I know you're doing really well right now with your Robinhood and your Quest trade and your Scott trade and all that. You aside, what I'm saying is I believe in specialization. I believe in what we do. And I think experienced agents provide value, insight, knowledge, relationships, contacts, their lawyer, their mortgage broker, the tradespeople. And it is a relationship business. You don't want to hear this, or you do if it benefits you. I cannot tell you how many transactions I've done in the last 21 years that were because of the relationship. It's hard to quantify that. It's hard to put a value on that. But even if you take that aside, the knowledge, the experience, the value, that a hardworking real estate agent in the condo sector, understanding first-time buyers and young people and what they want, I don't think you can put a price on that. So that's it, guys. Those are my tips for first-time buyers in the condo market in 2025. All this to say, it's a lot, but hopefully having listened to the proceeding, I've given you the knowledge to go out and start looking. And the thing about knowledge is you're never full of it. Continue to read, continue to listen, continue to talk, continue to educate yourself, and have fun with it. Because the point is, it's supposed to be fun. Buying your first condo is an amazing experience. And I can tell you, what I said earlier, it really does shape you. Whether you are 20 or whether you are 30, it really does shape you and the years ahead. So guys, thank you so much for watching, as always, on YouTube or listening wherever you get your podcasts. Please remember to like, comment, or subscribe. Throw a comment down in the YouTube comments section. I always love reading those. And I will see you next week here on The Last Honest Realtor.